So the second type of electrochemical cell is called the electrolytic cell. Electrolytic cell forces the reaction to occur. So these are non-spontaneous reactions that are occurring in the cell. You should be able to draw the diagram, which is here on the right-hand side. Notice that it is one beaker instead of two separate beakers. Instead of a voltmeter, we have a battery. And then the only other difference is the sign of the electrode. So the cathode is our negative electrode and the anode is positive. However, cathode is still where reduction takes place and the anode is still where oxidation takes place. The only difference is the sign for that electrode. Occasionally, you might see the electrode as being graphite or platinum, and these are used when you're forming something that is not a solid. So for example, if we were forming hydrogen gas or oxygen gas, you would need to have that inner electrode to be able to conduct the electricity. So again, graphite and platinum are used if you're forming something that is not a solid. So how do you know the reactions? First, you want to write down all the chemicals that are being used and create the half reactions for those chemicals. Determine towards which electrode the different ions will flow. Cations go to the cathode and anions go to the anode. So again, the positive is going to go to the cathode and be reduced, and the negative is going to the anode and is being oxidized. And then you can balance those two half reactions and combine them to get the overall reaction. So for example, here we have a solution of sodium chloride. We have our positive sodium that's going to the cathode side, so it's going to be reduced. And so we can see that the positive ion has 2 electrons that it's gaining to form the 2 sodium. It's also a liquid, so we have these inert electrodes that are being used. Again, those could be platinum or graphite. The negative ion is the chlorine, and it's being attracted to the anode, which means it's undergoing oxidation, and so it's losing those 2 electrons. So an example would be to describe the reactions that occur at the 2 electrodes during the electrolysis of molten lead 2 bromide. So we have our beaker, we have our 2 electrodes, we have our molten lead 2 bromide. Remember, molten just means that it's liquid. So it's going to have Pb plus 2 and Br minus floating around. Our electrodes are connected with a battery. You can represent the battery like that. Sometimes instead of drawing a battery, you might see it as a series of vertical lines. Something along that line, so that these lines represent a battery. And so the positive, remember, is going to be attracted to the cathode, which is where reduction takes place, which means it has to gain electrons. And so we have Pb2 plus gaining 2 electrons so that the charges will balance, and then we have our lead. And then for the anode, that would be oxidation, and so we lose electrons, and so that's going to be our negative ion. And since bromine is a diatomic, we would need 2 of those, which means it's going to lose 2 electrons. And so that reaction is balanced if we were to combine these because of the 2 electrons. Make sure you try the problems from the textbook and let me know if you have any additional questions.